Testing 1 2 1 2 test 1.
Yeah, that's a registration and if you're doing leadership. Yeah.
Start. Okay. I'm sorry. All right, we're going to call tonight's meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our newest board members. We're thrilled to have you here. Welcome to Alora Davis, our student board representative. Thrilled to have you here from the STEM school. Thank you for being here. Okay, today's our first time having a little bit of a different meeting schedule, so we're going to start with our delegations. And Mr. Perez has agreed to facilitate those presenter or delegations. And first we'll have Karen Hawkins, school secretary.
So as you're walking to the front, I will read the statement, which is, hold on, where's the statement?
It's right here, I got it. 1,200
Here is the statement. I thought it was here what you gave me. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remark to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Karen Hawkins, and I am the school secretary at Normal Park. I don't think this is on.
Can you give her some sound? It is, we can hear you.
It doesn't come on until 5:30, so since it's new, we're all getting used to it.
Thank you. All right. Can you hear me now?
Sure.
Just 1 second.
Hold on. Try it now. Try it now. There we go.
Perfect.
I think.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hear me now? Okay. Well, hello. My name is Karen Hawkins, and I am the school secretary at Normal Park. As classified employees, we don't have an HCEA, a TEA, a union, or anyone really standing up for us. You're it, the people in this room. So thank you for listening today. This is only my story, but I've heard there are many others just like it. I have an advertising degree, and I worked in that field for years, but I thought it'd be fun to get a job at my daughter's school for a bit. Well, I'm still here 17 years later. It's because I absolutely love my job. I love everything about it except this one thing. Our objective is to educate and nurture children, so I completely understand why most of the conversations are in support of teachers. So I was thrilled to hear that you raised the minimum wage of classified staff to $15. They are so deserving. My coworkers' wages increased from $2 to $4 an hour. I got 72 cents. While neither are enough to match inflation, it's still a small raise and one that I am aware that you are not obligated to give us. At the secretary's meeting each August, the superintendent stresses how important our role is, how we're the face of the school, the support for teachers, parents, and children. Principals and staff tell me how vital I am to them, and parents joke that secretaries run the school. I know how much we contribute, and I do feel invaluable. Those words of affirmation and appreciation are a lot of what have kept me here all these years. On page 1, I've given you a breakdown of my income over the years, along with a list of 47 separate job duties that I do. I feel a secretary's responsibilities do not match the rate of pay, not in the competitive business world, and certainly not with the recent inflation. We also have college degrees, and we work 11 days more in the summer than teachers and most staff. The title school secretary really is a misnomer. We're more of an office manager than someone who just sits and answers phones. I know the pressures you all face with a limited budget and people hounding you from all sides, but this is a valid argument for another day. The main reason I'm here is I've spoken to secretaries who started this year. When they told me how much they're making an hour, it was very upsetting. I worked as a clerical assistant for the first 2 years and as secretary for the last 15 years. Last week I learned I'm only making $1.27 more an hour than someone who started as a secretary a month ago. And I'm making the exact same amount as another first-year secretary. Suddenly I went from feeling appreciated and valued to feeling angry, taken advantage of, and invisible. I also learned a new term, wage compression, and now I understand what's happening to me. What I don't understand is how this is even possible. I've shown up for 17 years with a positive attitude, growing more useful and knowledgeable each year. I've received the highest rating on all my evaluations, and I average only 1 sick day a year. I work nonstop every day, often from home, and I know every square inch of that building. As a magnet school and without a registrar, I have more duties than some. Salary should not be one size fits all. We just got a full-time nurse last year. I was the nurse for 13 years with no additional training or compensation. I have assisted countless staff and 14 new admin over the years, Dr. Robertson included. I truly felt like I had earned my status as top secretary, or at least in regards to my income. So you can imagine my shock when I learned that all of those years, all of that additional knowledge, all of that devotion and work ethic is only worth $1.27. I've never felt unappreciated until now. And to put it simply, it's crushing, and it took the wind out of my sails. On page 4 is a spreadsheet listing the work experience of other secretaries and their pay. Their names have been hidden because the numbers speak for themselves. I'm only giving you this one example of pay inequity, but I do feel I know it's happening to other veterans in all classified positions. I don't want to take anything away from new hires. I know you have to pay competitive wages, especially now that the cost of living has risen considerably. But I do feel strongly about this wage compression. It's not fair, it is not right, and it's very insulting to those of us who have proven our loyalty all these years. I know you're aware this problem exists and the conversation's already started. Thank you for addressing this issue. I'm not placing blame because there are many factors at play that cause this. I just want to put a face to all this and to show you how it affects people. I want you to see exactly how unfair it is on paper in real life. So whether it's a longevity bonus or preferably bumping your
time is done.
long-standing employees to a higher pay grade, please figure it out.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to? Yeah, go for it.
Dr. Robertson, maybe this is a Zach question, Dr. Brown question. Tag, you're it. No, I'm just playing. Question, have we, I don't recall this, but have we, or are we thinking about doing some type of compensation study or internal equity study to figure this piece out?
Yeah, there's actually a presentation here that's about this issue that Ms. Hawkins just addressed. So give me 10 minutes and I'll get there.
So we'll discuss it. Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Next, hold on. Go ahead. What's wrong with you?
Good evening, board members. My name is Jeanette O'Markell, and I am the president of the Hamilton County Education Association. And the previous speaker is correct. We do not get to bargain since 2011. We don't get to bargain for the classified staff, so I'm glad that she spoke up tonight. We do speak and stand up for what they need, but we don't get to bargain for that. But I'm here tonight, not to speak of that, but to welcome our new members to the board and to share with you a few things that educators want to see from you as you serve your term. Some of you who've been serving already do these things. First, educators want to see you. They want to see you in their buildings more than for special events. They want to see you in their classrooms interacting with their students. They want to show you what they are doing and introduce you to their students. They want to let you see the exciting things that their students are accomplishing. They want to share with you the needs they have to be able to support all of their students effectively. They want to see you in the building talking with them apart from the administrator, to go beyond the front office for your tour. They want to see you there early, before the school day starts, and the staff are at work. I've been in the buildings the last few weeks, and I was there at 6 a.m., which I'm not a morning person, but there were quite a few people, quite a few teachers there already. They want to see you volunteer, call the administrator and volunteer to help with morning duty, lunch duty, or substitute. I heard tonight kindergarten is a great place to substitute. They want you to ask them if you can sit in on a class or two and not just one that is handpicked. This includes the related arts classes, the E&L classes, the multi-handicap classes, but they want you to plan ahead as they are already stressed from all the normal disruptions and walkthroughs of observations. They don't want to see you every day or all day. That is disruptive to the learning. If you're there too much, some of them will also think they're in trouble. So come when you can. It is a very fine line, but I think you can handle that. I encourage you to try to have a goal to visit all of your schools each quarter. Some of you have a small enough group of schools that, although you may work full-time, you could get to one weekly for an hour or two and visit one more than once a quarter. You may also want to have a teacher and staff forum once a quarter after school. Educators want to know from experience with you that you support them. They want to know that you believe in them as professionals who are highly educated and have trained for the work they are doing, and that they continue to grow and learn to complete. They want to know that you believe that their input is critical and vital, as they are the ones in the classrooms doing the work every day. They can tell you what works and what doesn't. Show your faith in them by listening to them and implementing the suggestions they give. They also want to see that you are taking the board policy 1.106, Duties of Individual Board Members, Article 3, my relation to teachers and personnel, seriously, as many of you do, you do, but they want to see that you are supporting the employment of the persons best qualified to serve as employees and insist on a regular and impartial evaluation of all the staff, that you will support and protect personnel in the performance of their duties, that you will not criticize employees publicly, but will make such criticism to the director of schools for investigation and action if necessary. As elected public leaders, you already know that you have
1 minute.
are held to a higher standard, just like the teachers and staff. Teachers have a state law that dictates their code of ethics. I would challenge each of you to embrace that as your own expectation of yourselves. That is what educators want to see. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to working with you this year.
Thank you. Miss Cindy Teppenpaugh?
Hi, I'm Cindy Teppenpaugh, and I am the permanent sub at East Ridge Elementary. I work every day, the students are in class, and at the request of Mr. Corey, our principal, on in-service and professional development days. I sent each of you an email that is copied in the folder that I gave you. You'll also find various other documents that explain the substitute policies for Hamilton County schools. Some of the documents have a star in the upper left corner because I was not a permanent sub in 2021 or 2022 or 2020 and 21, and did not receive those documents until this past week. You'll also find my communication emails with ESS and their responses, and they have been most supportive of me throughout this. It was my understanding that a one-sentence statement defined whether a permanent sub could receive the bonus or not, and this is about bonus inequity. It says permanent subs need to reach their agreed 5 days a week to receive their bonus. That was all that was stated about permanent subs and the bonus. Nothing was said in the document that on weeks where Hamilton County schools run a short week, the permanent subs would receive the bonus, would receive the bonus based on having worked at least 3 days and a number of days that they worked that week. So I assumed incorrectly that the shorter week permanent subs would not receive the bonus, but regular subs would get the bonus for the days they worked. This was a concern until I received emails from ESS letting me know that all subs would get bonuses for the short weeks. Last Friday, I was looking at my pay deposit in my bank, and I discovered that in my estimation, it was short about $120. That's the amount of the bonus. And then I realized that I wasn't really due the bonus because that was the week I worked a 4-day week and I had minor surgery. Later, I got to thinking about regular sub pay versus permanent sub pay. I compared classified regular and classified permanent subs. I discovered that when both are classified employees work a 4-day week, the regular sub makes $120 more that week because of getting the bonus. But the permanent sub doesn't get any of the bonus because of the 5-day requirement. In 1 month, if both worked 4-day weeks, the permanent sub would draw $480 less than a regular sub. That's a significant amount in some families. That's $120 a week for 4 weeks, which makes it $480. That's my utilities. I included copies of the materials I received from ESS about the policies and reread that one-sentence policy on the attachment I received. I would like to know the rationale for the policy requiring permanent subs to work 5 days a week. As a permanent sub, I assumed that I would be in the building whenever the students are there and school is in session. I never knew that there was a discrepancy when I crunched the numbers. My request is very simple. All subs need to follow the same guidelines or policies. I'm not asking for the pay to be increased.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, but all subs receive the bonus if they work a minimum of 3 days. Both regular and permanent subs have the very idea that the regular school week, where 4 days are worked by both, a regular sub gets a bonus and a permanent does not. One last comment, if I may. I have dedicated 50 years, this is being 51, to teaching. It's my calling, not a paycheck, not a job. I love what I do, or I definitely would not be doing this at my age. The students of Hamilton County deserve the best of the best, and that is what permanent subs gives to the students. All subs deserve and earn every penny they receive. Days as a sub can be difficult and even sometimes unnerving. We walk into those classrooms not really knowing what to expect. We don't know the names of the students or the potential for problems. But we keep coming back every day because we're the best of the best.
Thank you very much. Ms. Scarlin Valderas.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. So today it is my goal to bring to your attention a subject that is not often thought about or discussed within our public schools. And that topic is the data mining of public school children via surveys. And I just want to make it very clear that today I am not speaking out against student well-being surveys, but I am asking that this new school board proactively address the data mining of children. In a few weeks, children across our county will partake in a student well-being survey administered in schools via Panorama. Panorama contracts state that they do not sell children's data, while stating that any data that enters their system belongs to Panorama. So we must ask ourselves, is our children's sensitive data truly safe and protected? And who has access to this student data? A simple Google search will bring story after story about hackers hacking public school systems and taking student and employee data. I do not believe that Panorama or our school district is immune to hackers. While our school district does, to some extent, follow PPRA laws, it's beneficial to take further steps to ensure our children's data is protected. Currently, our schools utilize opt-out forms that give parents the choice to opt their children out of surveys. If an opt-out form is not turned in, the school assumes the parent is okay with their child being surveyed. The best way to protect our children's data is to require opt-in forms for student well-being surveys, school climate surveys, or any other survey that may be administered in school. Thankfully, TDOE's Memorandum of Understanding for school climate surveys allow local school boards to put policies in place that require opt-ins. TDOE already provides the resources, including a permission slip sample to enact opt-in for surveys. Opting into surveys would require a signed permission slip to be turned in before a child takes a survey in school. There are benefits to opt-in forms over opt-out forms. First, opt-in forms are transparent and give parents the choice to allow schools to survey children or not. Second, opt-in forms could yield more reliable data regarding school climate. A recent poll commissioned by the nonprofit organization Parents Defending Education states that 77% of parents support parental permission before survey administration in schools. So today, I asked the school board to create or update policies that will ensure opt-ins for in-school surveys. School board, please let the parents know that you value transparency and the protection of children's sensitive data by enacting opt-in policy for student surveys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our delegates. We'll move into our presentations. First, we have a presentation on opportunity and access, 4 pillars of work by Dr. Parker.
Thank you. You'll give us just a second. I'm going to try to make sure the screen is on. First of all, welcome to our new board members. Superintendent Robertson. Members of the board, we'll just go with that. Out here, you can't see it, but this screen isn't working. So thank you for giving me the time tonight to share with you an update from the Opportunities and Access Division. I'm Neely Parker. I'm the Chief of Opportunity and Access. As you know, it is our just cause that all children will thrive and experience a future without limits. And it's really hard to believe, we've got 3 weeks until fall break. We're already almost through the first quarter. And so our board has set very ambitious goals for our students in our Future Ready 2023 plan. As we look forward, we know where we are as a system. We will not be able to reach our 2023 goals without increasing the performance of all of our student subgroups. And I'm going to be really try to be specific, but as we learned in the last board meeting, sometimes kids are in subgroups, super subgroups, and sometimes tonight I will refer to that group of kids as underserved populations of students. Almost 2/3 of students in Hamilton County are not in our highest need schools. So that's where opportunity and access comes into play alongside the work of the whole child support and advocacy. It's our job in opportunity and access to be committed to ensuring that schedules, staffing supports, and resources are aligned to meet the needs of each and every child. In previous meetings, you've heard us reference the academic press and personalization framework, and the work we do in opportunity and access directly aligns with that work. The work in our department falls under 4 big buckets. First of all, exceptional education. We're really digging in to look at what the scheduling and the programming looks like for our exceptional students. We've had many opportunities post-pandemic to work in ways we haven't worked before with programming for before and after school tutoring, summer school, and opportunities to use time for gap closure. We know that Hamilton County values choice and access, so access falls under Opportunity and Access Department, and also English as a new language. So it's our job to directly align, to create pathways to access to all opportunities that we can. Really look at the skills and the knowledge and supports our students bring to school every day. And we're really trying to flip the script to talk from an asset-based approach to look at potential, not deficits, but potential of all of our students. So our 4 big pillars, if you can see on this slide, this begins, we've got 4 major pillars around, you can call them goals, you can call them pillars, whatever you want to call them, but we have 4 really focused areas that we are narrowing in on. And number 1 is we want to make sure that all kids have the best access at Tier 1. Our core of instruction addresses all kids. We're really looking at gap closure post-pandemic, of course. Scheduling, can our schedules maximize student time and benefit? We know that as we always evolve as a system, building and growing capacity of our teachers and our leaders is going to be a prime target for us. So professional development, looking at inclusive training and systems in Hamilton County, as well as how we staff accordingly for our kids. Our 3rd pillar is to really look at school choice. As I said earlier, Hamilton County, our community, our families, we value access. And so we're really trying to look at how do we as a system define school choice and what is our vision and approach to that work, and really continuing to be transparent and look at the accountability data around our choice programming and offerings for our families. Lastly, post-pandemic, during the pandemic, I should say, Hamilton County stepped up in a way that is quite remarkable. And what we found is the partnerships we garnered during that time that our kids were not able to always access the school building. Our community partners stepped up in a significant way, and we don't want to lose that. So it's our goal to continue the partnership with United Way, other agencies. You all know we have several grant opportunities we've been given, for us to really think about what do our partners need to know about students, what do our families need to know in a profile of a student, and really looking at how we can create better access through a family engagement portal. When I sit here and think about even my time that I've been able to serve in Hamilton County, some remarkable work has been accomplished by our teachers, by our every staff member. I even think about the times our bus drivers step up. It's remarkable to be able to serve in Hamilton County. But we know as we look forward to our next 5-year strategic plan, or even 2030, it's kind of hard to even think we're getting closer to that. We know that what got us here won't get us there. And we're committed that all will mean all children will thrive and experience a future without limits in Hamilton County. Thank you for giving me just a moment to share with you.
Our little boxes are not working tonight, so if you have a question, I guess we can raise our hands. Feel free to raise your hand. Any comments on this side? Okay, Ms. Jones.
So, Neely, in Pillar 1, when it talks about improving access to Tier 1 instruction and supports, and it talks about providing those supports to bridge those gaps, gap closure, all of those things. I know that United Way recently acquired some funding from the state to do the high dosage tutorial services. And I asked this at Senator Watson's summit that day as well. We know that that funding is limited. We know that various community organizations also provide supports like tutoring and that sort of thing. But I guess what is needed from us as a board or as community leaders, what specifically should we be advocating for? One, I know it's funding, but I guess at what level? Because what I do know is, because I was at the meeting at United Way, that is not going to even scratch the surface. We just really playing with it. I mean, we teasing ourselves. So, and then I know other places, their funding's in, things are going on. Some schools have it, it's virtual, parents, and for me, I'm only using me as an example, I'm a hands-on, I need to see it, do it, hear it. I need somebody in front of me. So virtual learning is not my best learning ability. So if virtual is an option for the kid at the school, but it's better if somebody was in front of them doing that, then how are we, like, so I guess what what can we do as the board in conversations with community leaders, community organizations, philanthropy, state, federal, whatever, to help our students get the best that they need, because what we have right now, I mean, it sounds nice, but it's not going to really affect the entire student body that it needs to touch.
Well, and you're exactly correct. It's really easy to say these simple words on paper, but to execute it community-wide is a huge undertaking. So what I would say, Ms. Jones, is that number one, continue to meet us at the table. What I've valued more than anything is that our partners continue to show up when we invite them. And they continue to press us by making us aware of the needs at the community level, and then what we can then extend and offer. That back and forth input output is extremely important, and that's where even the two design ideas of a portal and the profile of a learner really came about, was through those conversations. As far as, I will say it is expensive. I totally agree with you. But I also know what we learned post-pandemic is there are places where our children land after school, and that's still credible, valuable time, and that's where the benefit comes, is for us to stay connected and mapped to where our kids go and when they come. Does that make sense? Because that's where we've seen the greatest leverage. We've even had opportunities where our teachers can go and support. You know, this has opened a door for us to work in a way that we've never been able to work before. And that's a different place today. We're in a different place than we were even 3 or 4 years ago.
So, thank you. Again, thank you, by the way, for the push toward asset-based community development, which is some of my background and history. And again, for those that don't, that's worth looking into, because basically we start with the belief that people have potential and capacity. And for that, the language we use, the way we address it, all of that's important. I think, just to point out, so a couple weeks ago, I got a call from one of our principals because a nonprofit that was supporting them in their school lost funding, and that funding implied that nonprofit was going to split an individual between two schools. And the phrase, I told them I was going to use this phrase often because I think it's a valuable phrase. He said, it's like I was building a house and they just took away the hammer. And that nonprofit was very supportive with especially some students that required additional support and additional help. And that gives us, very much the bigger picture, because you're not talking about us as the schools doing everything. You're talking about us in partnership with multiple organizations and the schools and everybody really achieving results. And I don't know, I think it comes back to a call, and the reason, because that came to mind as we were talking, the reason I asked for the mic was, at the end of the day, yes, our schools need more money, and yes, our nonprofits need more money. And so I scrambled and contacted whoever I knew, and in the end, I'm not sure if they were able to receive all the funding they needed, but we were close at least. I think we were short $15,000 or so, so hopefully they got it. But we'll hear, and the public will say very often, there's a lot that falls on nonprofits and churches and all that, and I 100% agree. I've been involved in churches my entire life, and churches struggle with getting volunteers for Sunday school, right? Like we struggle with all of it, and for a lot of that, there's a huge requirement of funding and support. So for those that are listening, and that's kind of my purpose, our goal is as a community to give opportunity to every one of our students to walk them into the potential that we believe, many of us, that God has put in their lives. And so please find and pursue those who are participating in this help, because it would be a shame, as I told somebody in that process, wait till you find out that because of $3,000, something got shut down. And you'll find that out. And it's painful because I think when we look at the scope of things, $3,000 sounds like we could scramble for that and get that, but you can't do that 79 schools, 79 months, 12 months of the year all the time. It starts running out. So I really think as a community, we just need to activate everybody to do their part and participate. So thank you.
Well, I will say this one last comment. Thank you for that, because I do want to say, to your point, Ms. Jones, it's also, we welcome accountability, because this is a very high value, high need, high dollar at times, and we want to be very focused in what we do, especially from the district level. We know there are also school level supports that are needed, and sometimes schools need to be very individualized, but we don't want to be so broad that we're not effective. That's what we need more than anything, is the efficacy and the efficiency that really moves the needle for kids. That's where we could really use the support. Thank you.
Mr. Keene?
So last week at the Literacy Summit, I left with a question in mind, and so I thought I'd ask it because the category here is opportunities and access, and Tier 1 is about support. So Dr. Kuhn shared the new law, which made it to the news and truly has been interpreted many different ways, and was interpreted in that meeting 2 different ways. But I guess my question is, what's the action plan? Are we getting ready to do that? I know United Way has been given some money to work toward that, but from what they spoke out, that it was thousands of students short by what they've been given. So what's going to, when are we going to be looking at this? Because I know we're in a time frame that we need to be doing something.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. And we're deeply involved in the strategy for how we're going to respond. And truth be told, it's a multi-pronged strategy, and we're going at it all of the ways. So Tier 1 is certainly a part of it. The high dosage tutoring that we've already talked about has to happen sometimes in school and sometimes out of school. So we're looking at some real innovative strategies to bring people, and to Ms. Jones' point, virtual doesn't always work, right? And so getting more people into the building is enormous. We're looking at, of course, the summer learning is a huge piece of that, and making sure that that parents understand the necessity for their kids to be at summer learning, and that we're able to really meet the needs of those kids in a really intentional way during the time that they are there. So that extended day is also a huge part of it. And then we really think that parents play a really important role. I think, I was at the Literacy Summit as well, and there's some really fantastic resources for parents that dose them up, so to speak, and equip them with what they need to really support some of those strategies. And we think, all these school-based strategies without that parent piece could fall short. And so we're really excited to really go deeper in that space. The other thing we're really evaluating is, this notion of retention. Sometimes it's appropriate, right, to retain a child. We know that the K-2 space is the most appropriate space. And so we're reevaluating kind of some of the ways that we assess student readiness in that space as well, to make sure that we're making good decisions. So partnerships, school-based supports, extended day supports, looking at some of our retention work, and then that family piece.
So let me ask you one question on that. You mentioned about out of school time. So that was one of the questions when they were talking about it that varied by opinion. Mm-hmm. Now, the education opinion was that would work. The legislative opinion was that it was supposed to be during school time. So can a student receive the 3-to-1 tutoring outside of school hours and have it count toward their requirements to be moved on?
Yeah,
They
the
can.
answer
Okay.
the answer to that is yes. We're
Okay.
really taking a targeted approach. The legislation says that if a child doesn't meet the expectation by the end of 3rd grade, they have to take the summer learning option and or high dosage tutoring the next year, depending on where they fall.
we're really looking at that 4th grade year to really adhere to double down on those ratios. So we're going to have a small cohort of kids that may make it to the 4th grade, still need that high dosage tutoring. One of the best ways for us to guarantee that is to build that in 4th grade. I think it's really important that we all understand that's not free, right? But it is a way for us to guarantee that it's kind of that final push for that on grade level reading that we'll be able to do in that 4th grade space.
Mrs. Black?
I attended the literacy summit, and I'm fairly concerned about this partially funded mandate that's coming down from the state around this 3rd grade retention. So what I heard at the summit was, that communities have all of these partnerships, and we're just kind of expected to figure it out, kind of. I'm glad to know that there's a space for, and we have some working on putting plans in place. My question is, are some of those in-school times, is that coming at RTI? Is it taking away from other instructions in order to meet these intensive, obviously we have to address these interventions, but how much is this planning it into a school day instead of having it after, interfering with other core instruction? And if we're doing things outside of school time, are we planning for the cost of transportation and all of those things?
So then we've got to look at every option. What I will say is, to Neely's presentation, one of the key pieces is scheduling, right? Tier 1 has got to be prioritized. We can't take kids out of Tier 1 to provide supports and expect them to make progress. So the scheduling piece, that's why we're talking about it, because it's a super complex issue. I think that's going to be really important. Out of school time is going to be an important piece of this. We can bring in people and train them, right, to support this work. We also know that under TISA, there is funding. It may not be all the funding that we need, but there is funding for this. We've already started talking about what impact does that have on the way that we staff schools, right? We need to start looking at the number of kids that are performing below basic or approaching, below basic is not the right word, or approaching, and use that as a way that we staff assistants that can do this work. What I will say, though, is that if we want to talk about, we've been had a lot of internal conversations about what are the metrics for the next strategic plan, right? 3rd grade literacy really what we need to be looking at, or do we need to be looking further down the road? I was in a meeting today with the legislators talking about 6-year completion rates in post-secondary, right? Do we need to be looking at this, or do we need to be looking at that? The reality is we've got to make good decisions for kids. I think it's extremely important, and there's a lot of varying opinions about when do you retain a student, right? Is 3rd grade really the best place to retain a student, or should we actually start backing this up to kindergarten and looking at students more closely then and making decisions then and providing supports through 3rd grade? What I hope that we don't do as a district and as a community is that we're just supporting kids because the law says that we have to, right? We should be doing this regardless. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be complex work, but it's the right work.
Yeah, but I had other concerns around just the, I guess, cookie cutter idea and structure of this law, not trusting the educators and parents and people involved in that student's lives to make the decision around retention. It seems very prescriptive.
Well, to your point, I mean, research says that retention is most effective when the parents are in support of it at any grade level, right? Because they're supportive of that remedial effort to get their kid where they need to be.
All right. Mrs. Jones?
One more question. So with the tiers, and as it relates to this whole new law and process, what are the plans, I guess, for the parent education piece, not the engagement piece, but the parent education piece on that? Because I personally know from a family member who is college educated, he's still struggling with trying to understand the tier 2 status his child has in a magnet school, because all he got sent home was the piece of paper, like nothing to go with it. So then he calls me like, I need help with her. And so what is the parent education piece on that? Because I saw in the paper, because he sent it to me, so I saw in the paper what they're going to do in the building. But this is a parent, and I'm pretty sure that he's like most, that if they knew what to do with them at home, they would do it at home too. Granted, not all, but some would. So what are we doing to around, I guess, parent community education on what this retention, what this law is, and what those two subcategories of retention, like, because everybody's confused. I'm telling you, everybody's like Mr. King said, everybody's confused. So what are we doing to kind of overall continue to get that out, to make sure that the days and the we's of the world are not telling the story, and that we're making sure that people understand what that story is, and then what are we providing support with for the home?
Yeah, we're deeply involved in this conversation. We were just having conversations with principals yesterday about restructuring some of our early grade report cards to ensure that that information goes home early and regularly. I think what you're referring to is the literacy letter, right? We're required by law that anybody who's below a certain level has to receive a letter, and they understand the fundamental skills that their kids need. And we, in that letter, we give them some resources. You heard or point them to some resources. But to continue to get those resources out in front of people. I know you're familiar with the literacy nights that we do. We're doing those all over the county. We're doing them by learning community. You know, at the Back to School Bash, we had a lot of literacy supports there, so we're really digging into that. I was just meeting with Brecken, who falls under Dr. Parker, and talking about, like, we need some text campaigns. We need some get the thing on their phone so that we can make sure that they see it, because I agree with you. The more empowered parents are in this space, the more they will be able to participate. And we all, or many of us, know the early literacy space, a lot of times it's just dialogue, it's vocab acquisition, it's sounds, it's pointing things out. And so there's some real opportunities with our parents, but we're deeply committed to that being central to this piece, because to Dr. Robertson's point, like, we don't want to do this to check the box.
Right.
Wouldn't it be amazing if at the end of this process our parents really are better equipped to support their kids in early literacy? That's what we want.
Okay, any last comments, Mr. Smith?
Nelly, thank you for your presentation. I'm really glad to hear you drilling down, having part of that stool, the parent piece, and with the parent portal. I just would encourage you to make sure that that's being well communicated, because kind of in my other life and some of the parents that I deal with, and you mentioned some, I share with them some of these supports that are available, and they don't know. They've never heard of that. Really? Y'all do that? So I got to believe if those few parents that I work with in another program aren't aware, there's masses out there that aren't aware. So some way to really make sure that parents know what's out there available. Sometimes I think that we as an education system, too much is expected of us. And we don't expect enough of what goes on at home. And obviously we can't change home, I know all that, but I just think that that's vitally important.
Right. Okay,
So,
yep,
yeah.
one last comment, Mr. Prez.
So to add to that, again, one of the challenges, and you all know this, but maybe that's why some of this is more for the public, is that there are some parents who are very aware, and it tends to be the parents of some of these subgroups who are the least aware. And they're the ones we need to reach the most, right? So it's that challenge of how do we get to those who have no understanding or knowledge of what's available to their children. And then the other fact that I think we'll at one point have to deal with is all the steps it takes before you get the help and the support, and how can we bypass some of that to get the help and support as quickly and early as possible. I saw something out there in the news, but I'll read out and learn more before I say something, because I just saw it today. But it is, how do we bypass some of this to just get the kid that everybody knows needs help, but we got to go through all these steps before we get there. So thank you all.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. We'll move into our next presentation, Dr. Robertson, classified pay compensation.
Yeah, so real quickly through this, and just to follow up on what Ms. Hawkins said in her 5 minutes to you guys, that we're not where we need to be with classified compensation. In fact, we're probably not where we need to be in a lot of places with compensation. What I wanted to do with this presentation is to provide context, especially for new board members, of kind of where we've been with classified compensation, where we know gaps exist, and hopefully where we can go as a district. So of course we'll anchor in this. Every decision we make is about all children thriving and experience a future without limits. So our entire benefits package, when you talk about pay, you've got to talk about the benefits package as well. It's not just about the dollars per hour. And our strategy around benefits, the total benefits package, is obviously we've got to recruit great talent. Not only do we have to recruit great talent, but we've got to retain the talent that we currently have. And we've got to look at competitive total rewards. We're not just competing anymore with Catoosa County, Cleveland City Schools, Bradley County. We're competing with Blue Cross, Unum, other businesses, right? And so we've got to look at the total rewards. So when you talk about total rewards, of course, that's salary schedules. We look at first at salary, and some of our younger employees, that's the first and only thing that they look at. But the reality is that benefits are included in that. I won't go in detail here, but I wanted to put up here a couple things for you to consider about benefits, especially insurance. We have not increased the cost of insurance to employees in, I think, over 7 years. That doesn't mean that our benefits have remained stagnant. In fact, we've improved our benefits significantly. A few things that we've done is look at dental insurance. We used to be on a reimbursement plan, meaning that when you went to get your teeth cleaned, you had to pay up front and then got reimbursed. For our lowest paid employees, that's a really difficult burden, right? And so now we're on a insurance plan that we negotiated with HCEA. It's a big push on their part. We agreed that it needed to be done. It's done. Again, no extra cost to the employee. We've also implemented our clinics. Took my daughter to a clinic yesterday. 0 out-of-pocket cost. You can get prescriptions there for very little out-of-pocket cost, right? So those are some, when you talk about benefits, some things that we've done that hasn't taken dollars out of our employees' pockets, but is improving that total compensation package. Of course, we have to continue progress there, right? We've made some big steps, we have to continue it. So you look at a timeline over the past 5 fiscal years for classified compensation, and we broke it up, just kind of classified together, looked at school nutrition and then SACC. So the first bullet point is the fiscal year 2019, right? And it goes to this current fiscal year. When you look at it, we have increased starting pay significantly, and that was a focus of the previous board because, quite frankly, starting pay is where we were struggling. Okay, that doesn't mean that we stop at starting pay. We have to continue to look at the compression issues that it took because we accelerated starting pay so quickly. All right, so in 5 fiscal years, we increased by nearly 50% in all 3 of those categories in terms of starting pay. All right. So when you look at last year with classified compensation, we had 2 things that really were top of mind. It's improving the salary schedule, all right, and we'll talk about some changes that we made there. But it's also getting our lowest paid employees starting at least $15 an hour, all right. So what went into this compensation study, and we did have a consultant that looked at this with us because, again, when we talk about a competitive market, we're not just talking about other school systems at this point. We're now having to compete with a lot of employers that are struggling to get jobs filled. And so what we started is we're going to continue to review jobs every 3 years. We think this is important as the market is changing, and it's changing dramatically year to year, that we have to look at that. We're also going to ask you to consider what is the appropriate % pay increase per year, right? So with this scale, you can say we want classified employees to get a 2.5% pay increase, and now we're at a place where that scale can move together. We also have to make sure that this aligns with the market. And that's the reality. With where the market is, we have to make sure that our pay aligns with it and that it's competitive. All right, so one of the kind of hot button topics, I should have said this at the beginning, but I provided you with a frequently asked questions document that was put together by Human Resources and provided to employees earlier. But one of the biggest questions we're getting is about the change in the pay scale. So the previous pay scale had 40 pay grades and 26 steps. In between those steps, you saw anywhere from a 0.5% increase to a 1% increase. I want to be very clear here that as educators, we assume that step increases just happen. That's not the case. You have to approve the step increase, all right? So it doesn't just happen every year automatically that we get a step. You have to approve it, okay? But in that old one, about 0.5 to a percent increase between steps. And there was a lane, 20 through 24, that saw no increase. So in theory, an employee could sit there for a number of years and literally see no increase in pay. With the current one that we started in 2023, moved down to 16 pay grades and 16 levels. In between each of those levels is a 2.5% pay increase. So if you approve a level increase, that means that every employee is getting a 2.5% pay increase. And there are no static levels, all right? Every level has a 2.5% pay increase. The reasons we did this and what we want to make sure that we point out is that this increases the earning potential. So even though there are less levels, the higher end is higher, right? The highest level is much higher than the old schedule. We also know, and this is a point, quite frankly, that Ms. Hawkins made that we've got to start considering and that this scale allows us to do, is that just because you're a bookkeeper at one school or a secretary at one school, the demands might be very different. An example of this, if you're thinking about a bookkeeper at a high school that's got 1,500 kids and an athletic program and a band program, that's much more difficult than a school with 1,000 students that doesn't have athletic programs, okay? Another example of this, when we talk about educational assistants, we know that being an educational assistant in exceptional ed is a much more difficult job than a regular ed assistant. What the new scale allows us to do is to look at the specific job and say, okay, what are the knowledge, skills, abilities that we need for this job, and then match it with the appropriate pay, okay? Those are going to be hard conversations because it's different than what we've been doing. That internal salary relationship, again, looking across schools and not just saying every secretary makes this amount and then we'll move you up by step, but looking at, you know, what jobs create certain responsibilities or more difficult working conditions. And then, of course, we did consider previous placement on the scale so that we ensured that everyone got at least a 2.5% pay increase. Even if you went from, you know, the highest level, the highest step down to, you know, maybe level 14, we still made sure that every employee got at least a 2.5% pay increase. So just an example of this, looking at an educational assistant that started working at HCS last year on the old scale. They would have started at $13, just over $13 an hour, and their earning potential would have capped at $16.47, okay? That same educational assistant on the new scale starts at $15.64 an hour and caps at $22.65. All right, so as we move on, this is what we've got to continue, and I think this is the point that Ms. Hawkins is making in her presentation. The priority last year was to ensure that we got starting pay where it needed to be. It created some compression issues. So we have to work on those compression issues. That's going to cause us to monitor this and make adjustments. But we had to get to a place where we could do that and start addressing those issues. Of course, we've got to continue to look at total compensation. We're getting to a place with benefits, and at some point we'll do a presentation on this, so that we're getting to a point that's a very fine line of, are we covering ourselves on those benefits? Again, we haven't increased costs to employees for a number of years, and that's a very important thing. The reality of this is it's hard. Compensation is not easy. was talking to one of the board members earlier this week, looking back at the merger in 2000. In 1997, many of the pay structures and the scales that we have today existed then. Why have we not addressed them? Because it's really hard, and it's controversial, and it's not fun. I won't say what that board member said it was like, but maybe they can tell you later, okay? But this is
Who's that
something
board
that is
member?
difficult to do, and is difficult to do, but we know we've got to do it. I'll be very frank with you. It doesn't just go with classified employees. It looks at our administrators' pay scales. Okay, it looks at what we're paying coaches and band directors. All right, we've got a lot of work to do with compensation. I know there's questions about why do we work with the consultant. The reality is we work with the consultant because we defer to expertise. We are not experts in the current market. This is a very different time than it was, 20 plus years ago when I got into education. You weren't competing with Blue Cross, schools weren't. You were competing with the districts around you and maybe some private schools. So we've got to continue to defer to expertise there. What I promised you, and I'll say we'll promise to Ms. Hawkins and the other great classified employees that we have in Hamilton County, is that we're going to continue to dig into this, and we're going to continue to work at it. If you remember a few years ago, the board made a very bold decision in January to give a pay increase to employees, which was quite frankly unprecedented. Usually we wait to a new fiscal year. We're going to continue to monitor this. I think some of the ideas that she had of, do we look at a longevity bonus? That's something we're interested in. We can do that and bring some numbers back. But ultimately, the next step in this scale is we've got to continue to work on the compression. Any questions?
Yeah. Mrs. Thurman?
Okay, Justin, you want me to tell everybody what I told you this
You know, I can try to recall it because it actually was really
yeah,
good.
I want to hear it from her.
Well, Justin and I were talking about this, and I said that, somebody once said that it's like a rabid skunk. Everybody knows it needs to die, and nobody wants to stomp it. And I said, I think it's time we stomp it. So we're going to have to do it, and it's going to be ugly, and it's not going to be a lot of fun, but we're going to have to do this. But when we were talking also, Justin, I think you had called some other areas around and about giving raises to classified and school level personnel without giving administrators a raise. This is very doable, and others have done this. Am I correct in our conversation?
So currently, our majority of our pay scales are tied on certified are tied to the teacher pay scale. There are other districts that don't do that. They say they put a scale together, for example, talk about high school principals, and they say in year one a high school principal makes this, regardless of the experience, regardless of how long they've been in the district, and in 10 years high school principals top out at here, right? What we do is you say, where are you on the teacher scale? Okay, you multiply that if you're a high school principal by 1.59. If you've been in the district for as an administrator for 4 years, you get $2,500 added onto that, and then at the end, that's your scale. It's very complicated, right? So yes, we can do that. And again, this is part of the hard conversation. We don't pay our administrators enough either. Talking about people sitting beside me, I'm talking about the school principals, school assistant principals. So that's where we would have some fun conversations, I think.
Well, like I say, I see a lot of the worker bees out there, the secretaries, the school registrars, the attendance clerks, the teacher's aides, those kind of people. I know what some of them make, and it's really, and
Yep.
I'm surprised we're able to keep some of them is what they're getting paid. But I think that's a conversation this board needs to have. Also, I did have a conversation with Jill about the next time we give a raise, instead of giving a percentage raise, to just find out. I think one way to kind of correct some of this is the next time, instead of giving a percentage raise, to find out what, say, 2% of the highest paid teacher in Hamilton County and find out what that amount is and give that amount to everyone across the board. And that way you're not hurting the highest paid teacher, but you're bringing some of the other ones up, because given these percentage raises just continues to widen the gap between the bottom and the top. And it's just, I've been talking about this for 20 years, and I've never had anybody to come up and say, Rhonda, I really like that idea, until Jill came up the other day and said, I think that's something we can work with. So I think that's something, a conversation the board might need to consider having, and see if we can't correct this because we can't just blow the whole thing up and start over, even though that's what I would really like to do. We can't do that. But with a pay scale, but because I think some of the people who do the most work inside the schoolhouse that the kids would miss if you weren't at school. And like I've always said, there's a lot of people in the central office, if they never came to work, the kids in the schoolhouse would never miss them. I'm sorry, but that's just a fact. But with the people, you let the secretary not be there. I was at, I guess it was the open house, at my grandchildren's open house. And you know who got the biggest applause? It was the school secretary.
How's everybody?
Everybody knows her.
Yep.
And she's very important to those kids and very important to the teachers. And nobody could find a key to the sign out in front of Daisy Elementary. It needed to be cleaned. It needed to be painted. And I was going to take on that task. And everybody said, well, but nobody knows where the key is. I went to the secretary. I said, do you have a key for the sign out front? She said, yeah, here it is. And I'm like, they've been looking for it for 5 years. She had it in her desk. All you had to do was ask her. And so, but anyway, these are conversations I think we need to have and find out really who is important at the school and let them know that we value them. And we need to, looking like these guys over here that do all this tech work, when something technical don't work, it's a problem, as we see tonight, that some things need to be worked on. But when things don't work right, those are the people we go to that really make things run in the school system. So, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth. I think it's something we need to look at the next time for budget. Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
So, a couple things. One, I want to publicly thank Ms. Hawkins and Ms. Teppenpaugh for your words. It takes incredible courage for you to get up in front of everybody and speak up. One thing I never want to hear, as long as I'm on this board, is people saying they're afraid to speak to us as the board because they're afraid they'll lose their jobs. That should never be the case for anybody. And I'll say a joke my daughter said, which I probably shouldn't, which was, Dad, they don't fire the bad people. Why would they fire the good people? So anyways, bad joke from my daughter. But no, the whole point is to retain quality employees and hire quality employees, people who serve. And as a person who's lived in the nonprofit world for too many years, I can say, I often say that the biggest donors to nonprofits are their staff, because they take hits to do the work that they do. And that shouldn't be the case. Every worker is worthy of their wage, and we should pay accordingly for that. So thank you for being bold on that. I was at a meeting, I won't say where, that many members of our community were invited, including Hamilton County Schools, about how to recruit and retain. And I want to say out there, our for-profit organizations and companies that are also challenged at this employment crisis we're living are very aggressive and are going to be very aggressive because they're struggling with finding employees. And so as we're working through this, Ms. Thurman, thank you, because you brought this up, by the way, Ms. Thurman, and I think it's really important to bring this up. But this isn't one that we can afford to wait. And I've said this before, but I always tell nonprofits, you can retain on passion and love. You can recruit on passion and love. You can't retain on passion and love, because at one point people have to pay bills, and we're living in a time in history where the bills keep going up, and I just can't do this. So the final thing I'll say is, and because this is the movement I'm going to start, of nothing else that I'll do, is I want to talk about take-home pay after costs to go to work, right? So like I want us to think in those terms, because when you do that math of take-home pay, and then we add, and it costs me $50 a week to get to work, and I might have to pay for childcare, the smartest decision a lot of our community members are making is staying home, because that's actually the cheapest decision. And we don't want incredibly high quality people to say, I want to serve so bad, but the best decision for my family is that I stay home, because we can't afford to work. And that's a very unfortunate reality when you do some of the math of this in some of those levels. So thank you. It's not easy. I do actually compensation studies for nonprofits. That's not an announcement. I only do it for the places I work, and I do it for the places of work, so I'm the hated person who has to go through it. And I do it for 8 to 10 people. I cannot imagine dealing with that with 6,500 staff members, trying to come up with what is the best way to do that. And you all take on that challenge, and it's not an easy challenge. We're not competing against Walker County or Knox County. We're competing against our own corporations in town who are offering great packages to people to come over. And I shouldn't say that out loud, but it's the reality. But folks, again, we need to do everything possible to give them the final. I said the final. Sorry, but I'm a preacher. The last thing is, in the meantime, and maybe Mr. Connor at the end of all this can share some of what I know he's got in the background there, but in the meantime, I really hope our community members step up. It's not the solution, but I'd love to see discounts for teachers. I've seen them before in places. I'd love to see opportunities for people who are serving in any public service, police force, fire services, anything like that, where it's like, hey, show us your proof, and we'll treat you like champions in Hamilton County, and we will roll out the red carpet for you. It's not the solution. You should get paid fairly. You should get paid well. You should be proud of your pay when you go home. But in the meantime, there's a lot of corporations, there's a lot of organizations out there who can step up and say, you know what, but you will be treated here like a king. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. Connor.
I was just thinking, Costa Rica, it's all coming back.
I agree with you, Rhonda. I agree with you, Marco. I was looking through Ms. Hawkins' awesome thing, and I read through every job description because I wanted to try and find one that was at least close to something that I've done with her, because Ms. Hawkins is at one of the schools in my district, and one day I walked in and she needed help, and we ended up on the roof. And we were hanging a sign from the roof, literally hanging over the edge of the roof, that most of the Hamilton County Department of Education members were scared to do, which is why we were doing it. So it was on here. I think assist parent volunteers with job duties is the closest. But my question is for Dr. Robertson. I wanted to ask, because I'd written this down, you kind of hit on it at the end, what steps to go back to those that have been previously overlooked? And I'll say, you did say longevity bonuses. Is that the only step that we have, or do we have other options for people like Ms. Hawkins?
Yeah,
that are
no, I mean,
veterans?
we could look at other things, like the next approach to the salary schedule is look at, levels that are employees 3 years or above, or 5 years or above, and that would help with the compression. There are some other strategies that the consultant and HR are looking at to see what would help. And we knew the compression was going to happen. The first priority, again, was getting the lowest paid up to at least 15. And so it's a longevity bonus. It's looking at how do we increase the levels that are, 3 and above, stuff like that we can look at. We've got some rough numbers. They're not clean enough to share with you tonight, but what we'll do is we'll go back and look at 2 or 3 strategies and put some actual dollar amounts on them, so that you are, have enough information that y'all can make an informed decision.
I'd like that a lot. As we've said a couple times, keeping the good people here.
Yep.
If we know they're good enough to be here for 17 years, and getting the applause that Rhonda was talking about, we need to hold on to them. So thank you.
Are there any other comments? No. I will just say that I absolutely agree with many of the comments up here. We have to stay competitive to get great talent, but we can't accomplish our goals without that great talent. So I couldn't agree more on that front. I did wonder, are we planning for this to be a 2023 budget conversation, or is your desire to maybe have this conversation, the conversation about what this actually looks like sooner than that?
I think what it would, and again, it's y'all's desire, what I feel like I'm getting from you guys is it would be helpful if we put some options on the table sooner rather than later. And then once we have those options, Mary Ellen can obviously tell us if it's doable, what's doable, what isn't doable. And again, it's y'all's desire, but from conversations I've had, feels like you guys are wanting to possibly take steps prior than the fiscal year 24 budget, if at all possible.
I'm going to put this out there, but it may be interesting to have a working session on that with anyone from the board that's interested in that work. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, we can do that. I think this is a smaller, try to do it one off. I think the larger conversation is going back to Ms.
And it's that new math, so yeah.
Is going back to Ms. Thurman of saying if we're going to start doing it, let's look at all of it. And I think that's where we might need a few hours around the table to
well, I'm not volunteering to be a part of that working group. However, if there's board desire to be engaged as a working group, I just simply wanted to put it out there because there are a number of board members very passionate about the topic. So, Ms. Black, did you want to say something?
I was going to say, yes, I'm very willing to do that. I am passionate about this. I do agree with Dr. Robertson. I think it would be best to address the compression issue prior to the next budget season so that once the compression issue is addressed, we're not trying to do both things at the same time. Like we've addressed the compression issue and then we can give raises through the budget process and it's easier.
All right, well, we can continue. Mr. Groen, did you have something?
No.
Okay, great. All right, well then we will move on to Dr. Stewart. We're looking at the district student well-being survey.
Yeah, we just wanted to get this information in front of you. Most of you are familiar with the fact that we give the annual student well-being survey. We give it twice a year. And all of the information here is there in front of you, the kind of FAQs, as well as copies of the actual surveys. And so just wanted to get that in front of you. And again, want to kind of say why we do this, right? You've heard us talk about academic press and personalization. Personalization is about creating school communities that are rooted in care and where kids feel like they belong. And so this survey really gives us information to respond to how our kids are doing and how they're feeling in our buildings and what we need to do to continue to serve them well and create those cultures. I think the other thing that's really important about these surveys that I know is a value here is that it's student voice, right? These are the times where we get to hear from our kiddos. There's lots of ways to hear from our students. This is a really powerful one because we get to hear them as a whole and find out what we're doing, really well and what their needs are. And so we're excited about doing that. The last thing I'll say is that this information is really useful in schools. We think about it with our principals around action planning. We've talked about that personalization piece. We really want every single child in all of our schools to be connected, especially in our secondary schools, to something extracurricular. These kind of things help us to build that out. And so you've got the information in front of you, and I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
It's the information that I emailed to you guys last week. There are a couple of small edits in it, but the vast majority of it's just a hard copy of that information, but we wanted context for you.
All right, questions? Mrs. Thurman?
Okay, how long have we been doing this?
Third year.
The third year. Has anything improved since we've been doing this?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, and I think when we think about improvement, it's input and output. So what's improved? We're significantly more aware of what the needs of our kids are. What's improved is our administrators are looking at data that is not just about literacy, it is about student well-being. It's opened up the conversation for us to have that academic press personalization conversation that I think is really, really important. Yeah, our social workers are really engaged.
Yeah, well, some of these questions are, I just really don't know what it has to do with what when I guess I've just seen it evolve since I've been on the school board. We used to be a whole lot more concerned about academics. Now it seems like we've just gone off to where we're more concerned about social type issues, which is very concerning to me. We hardly ever talk about academics anymore. But understanding so in the past 30 days when others disagree with you, how respectful were you of their views? You know, that's an awful, during the past 30 days, I mean, I'm just thinking of my grandchildren and other young children I know answering some of these questions. I'm just not real sure how anything in the class, what that has to do with anything in the classroom. Whether you disagreed with somebody about something, what does that have to do? You know, sometimes I think maybe we've gotten off on this a little bit too much, and when I continue to see the reading scores decline and the math scores decline and things like that, I just wonder why we're even wasting time. Because some of this stuff to me is just a waste of time. If a student is having a problem, maybe you go to their parents and talk to those parents about that. Of course, my daughter has opted out of my grandchildren doing this because I just don't like my grandchildren, this being in their personal files forever, being somewhere forever. I just don't like this because, you know, my grandson may say, well, y'all, he got mad, you know, at a ball game and threw his glove like he did the other night and got a lot of trouble. Oh, well, that's really none of your business. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe he did something. Does that mean he's going to misbehave in school? No. What does that have to do with anything? If they're treating everyone in their classroom fine and everything, everybody's getting along, I don't know why we want to cause problems where there are none. When things go wrong for you, how calm are you able to remain? And that's an awful deep question for a bunch of kids. I mean, I don't even know that, like I got real angry right before I left work today, and I tell you what, I'm still not real calm about it. So does that mean I need some kind of intervention? No.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do though is, and look, I mean, I'm very transparent about this. I've got a daughter in this district, and what I really hope for her is that her teachers know her well, and she's like you in a lot of ways that she gets upset, and man, you can see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it's hard for her to hide. The teacher doesn't know that about her, and she doesn't recognize.
I bet she does
that.
now. And you didn't have to take a survey for her to find out. That's my whole
that's
issue.
But I understand. But that's we're in a place with our students that we know that for teachers to know them well and for kids to have a connection in school, that's a key factor in students being successful. The reason we put these surveys out publicly this year, and I talked to a group last week about this, we took their advice. We're being as transparent as possible through social media, through text messaging, on our website. We put the surveys out there for parents to read. In my opinion, there are not any controversial questions on there. This is a chance for teachers and schools to better understand their students. And for students to better understand themselves so that when they grow up to be adults, you know, hopefully they're successful. And we're not just talking again about test scores. And I agree with you in some ways that, yeah, we should be talking about test scores. I feel like we do that a lot, though, and we talk about academic progress a lot. What I want for our community and for our kids is that when we look at Hamilton County and we say, regardless of what school they go to or where they live, we can answer a simple question of saying, are they well? And that question is yes. Not, can they read? I mean, we want them to read. But I would, right now in Hamilton County, if you look at what's happening, we need our kids to be well.
Well, I don't know how this survey affects that. But anyway, I mean, that's fine. That's just my opinion. Like I say, my grandkids aren't doing it because I just don't like their stuff. Stuff that they do is out in the open anyway, and that's just. And I like others, I'm not real comfortable with a company that I've read a little bit about. I'm not real comfortable with them having a lot of information about me or my kids. I mean, it's bad enough when you're on Facebook and next thing you look at some product and next day you get bombarded by email and everything else and on your phone and everything about the product you looked about on Facebook. I mean, it's already bad enough without adding another stream into people being able to get into your get into your business, and I'm just not real comfortable with that. And I know a lot of other parents aren't either. But I'm just trying to figure out how this really furthers what we're trying to do with academics, because that's where my main focus is. That's why I've been on the school board this long, is trying to work on academics more than these social issues.
Okay, Mrs. Jones and then Mr. Groen.
It's odd that this conversation is coming up because, and for Rhonda to ask her question, and there, I think all of it is case by case, right? So you have children, this might not be telling much, right? Because their home environment might, or their village environment might be such as that it's not going to tell you a lot because everything's pretty much copacetic. However, 2 weeks ago, no, the Saturday after our last board meeting in August, I got a call from a parent in District 5 who had a student, is a mother of 4 students in District 5. And her child had some issues the year before at their previous school in our district with the bullying situation. And at that time, it was with the student in their school, and then a student in the school in the feeder pattern. And one particular day there was an incident where the child pretty much like left the school and like called his grandma, like, can you come get me? Like standing at the corner of the school sign. Wouldn't talk about it, just kind of clammed down, shut down, wouldn't say anything. Finally opened up to his mother and said, please do not say anything, because if you say something, they're gonna know I said something. Like those boys are gonna know I said something. And so at that point, every morning was a struggle to get this kid to school. That went on. Truancy became an issue, not because the kid didn't want to go to school, because he didn't want to go to school to learn. He didn't want to go to school because he was fearful of these children. Long story short, summer goes over, kid gets excited, go back to school in the fall, goes 2 weeks, and then middle of the day, Daddy, can you come get me? Something triggered, had to, clammed up, whole experience all over again. But because this child had participated in this, was in a part of the SSP, there were things that they were able to go and try to figure out, and they were able to, the story I just told you about the bullying, they were able to like track it back. And so I do think that there are benefits to this at sometimes, because no, he didn't want to tell somebody, but maybe he answered this question. Or maybe it led to that. And I think it's just all case by case, which why it is good for us to have options of opting out or opting in or however you want to opt. But I think that we have to look at it no more, because I'm now in that generation of saying back in the day, no, we did not have these problems when I was in school.
Welcome.
I like it here because I got to enjoy my childhood too. But now that's not the case, and there's so much more going on that affects our children's academics. Like, they don't go to school, they don't learn. They can't pass their tests, they can't read. I mean, all of it kind of trickles down, and sometimes it is social, emotional, or psychosocial, or there are other factors. It's not that they don't have the brain capacity to learn. Other things are affecting that, and it's all kind of data across the world that supports that. ACEs, I mean, it's all kind of stuff. And we all think we turned out fine, and sometimes, in retrospect, I'll speak for myself, I had pretty good parents, but I ain't always okay. So we have to be able to address that, because if not, we're going to continue to see what we see here in Hamilton County, and we are seeing every other day 14, 15, 12-year-old people, children shooting each other, killing each other, committing suicide, running away. They're living in cars, homes. I mean, so much going on. And so maybe the survey isn't the best option for everybody, but I do think this is a viable piece of, I can't even think of what the word is anymore, tool. It's a viable tool to be able to utilize to help students where it is imperative that we know these things about them.
Mr. Groen.
I have a couple of questions and some comments. This says this is done twice a year, and students complete the survey in a classroom setting on a computer or other device. So is this done in the classroom? is it a special computer that they're using or
Typically it'd be their Chromebook.
Chromebook? Okay. Why do they have to do this during class time?
I mean, it takes, typically 5 to 10 minutes. Again, as we say, we feel like this is valuable information that helps us improve outcomes for students.
Okay. You spoke about transparency in the data. Some of these are very open-ended questions. How is that converted into data that could be used, say with this program that we have, Decision Ed, or what is being used to analyze this data and what is the output, and how are we judging the effectiveness, especially the efficacy of this data that's coming out?
Sure. So the way it gets reported back to us, there are 6 competencies, right? So self-management, grit, those kind of things. And it rolls up into these composite scores, so to speak, in a school. And it can show us in the fall where a group of kids are. It can show you the whole school. It can show you the boys in the school. It can show you the grade levels. It shows you any number of ways to look at those 5 competencies that are these soft skills, right? I think about the portrait of a graduate work we're doing. What everybody wants the school district being intentional about are the skills that this measures. It is the self-awareness kind of piece. So it rolls there. We could happy to show you a dashboard, but it's very accessible and you can slice it any number of ways. You can look at your middle school versus other middle schools, right? You can look at some of the student groups that might be listed and see, is everybody experiencing belonging in our building? And what can we do about it? So there's lots of different ways for our leaders to look at the data and make decisions.
So trying to get to how, is there a box that they check? Do they type in their responses? How is this data collected and who makes the decisions, if it is a written response, on how that is on, say, a Likert scale?
None of these are open-ended where they actually, I think there's only one that they could actually comment. They're all on scales. They're all on scales, so they're just clicking.
So they're on a scale?
Yeah, they're all on scales.
Okay. Can I have access to see what, say, the 6th through 12th grade survey?
You have all 3 surveys.
No, I have the
We weren't given the
questions.
answers. We weren't given the answer options, just the questions.
Oh.
So we don't know what that is.
So we have no idea. Also, the first time I received this information, there was a section on there as to how to assess these questions, but on the printout that we got today, it's not there. And I tried to go to that, and the only way you could find out how this is assessed is if you were a parent and had a student registered in the parent portal.
I think I'm understanding that the links weren't working for you to click on. Is that what you mean?
No, it actually took me to a place and asked me for my student to be able to look at how this survey is assessed. So you couldn't do it unless you...
Sure. So it's okay. There's a couple. There we go. I was trying to hurry it. There's a couple links that we sent out. One of them, it seems like the one that you clicked on here, is where parents can opt out their student. That is a link that goes straight to the parent portal.
Mhm.
The other links in that documentation are linked on, I think they're Google Forms. That they're at. If you want to get with me afterwards and we can click that link, make sure not one of them's protected in a way that we didn't intend to, I'm happy to check that out and be sure that it's out there for people. But I do know that there's that one link that takes you to Power School to get into the parent portal, and that's where you can have access to your student and be able to opt them out of the survey at that point.
Okay, and we've done this survey for 3 years now. Is this going to be the 4th year?
It's the 3rd year.
This is the 3rd year. I would like to be able to see that data from the first 2 years.
Sure.
And I know, student and parent confidentiality is exceedingly important. How are we going to track, or how do we intend to track what this is asking us? And And how does that tie in with any other program we have within the schools in terms of academics? How in the last 2 years has that changed in any particular school, in any particular grade, what we are doing academically?
So I think what I hear you asking is how are we using the data to make decisions?
Yes.
In a simpler way. So I think back to Dr. Stewart's explanation of looking at the competencies and having a better understanding of what the needs are of students in a specific school or even in a specific class of that school. That informs the teacher, and those decisions are made at the school level of looking at what strategies she might need to adjust, or what students might need more support when they know they're coming up against a difficult concept where a kid typically gives up, and she may need to give a little bit of a push or some encouragement to that student. So those are some simple ways that the data is used. But again, around the personalization, what we have committed to is saying that we are going to personalize education for students, and this is data that provides us with information that helps us personalize for kids.
Was there any professional development done prior to the beginning of school on, let's say we have an 8th grade teacher, and we have 2 years of this survey, and would that 8th grade team have any professional development made available to them so they could look at the data from the students that they're going to have sitting in their desk on the first day of school?
Are you talking about specific to this survey or data in
Specific
general?
to this survey.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Go to the...
I want to address your formal question regarding how does this speak to the academic needs of students. So if we get really specific and we talk about one of the competencies, which is grit, grit just kind of informs us regarding how students accomplish their goals and just their ability to kind of hang in there when things get hard. Goal setting skills is a part of the work that we teach K-12. So when we start to speak about middle school, which is a strong focus for us as we move forward, we want to make sure that students are able to set, if it's academic or personal goals, and then take the steps they need to accomplish those goals. That's a standard for our students, and that's how we use the data to address maybe some of the needs as well as the successes of our kids. So if we see kids that have really strong grit, we want to continue to encourage that. If we see students that might need a little support in the area of grit, then we teach around that so we can encourage our kids to grow.
My question was, you've got an 8th grade teacher, you've got an 8th grade team that are going to see all the same students.
So professional development for these 8th grade teachers?
Yeah,
right.
If we have this data, why wasn't a professional development day spent for that 8th grade team on the students that are going to be sitting in their room on the first day of school?
Dr. Russell, let me address
without expecting these teachers on their own time to assess that data, if they can, at a teacher level. So I'm just trying to figure out, if we're going to spend the time to do this, and we're going to have all this data, was it shared with the people who have the most influence on those students or not? And if it wasn't, why not?
No, the answer is yes. So we look at this data at any number of places. Patricia did a presentation to our principals, I believe in April, when we were doubling down on, let's talk about belonging, what does it mean? And she did a whole session helping the principals. If you were addressing an issue in your building, how could this data inform some of those pieces? And then how could you transfer that and add it to part of your action planning, and then what you're going to do in the fall. And then they add these things, and it's part of their PD at the school level. They'll pull up the data and start having conversations, and they'll point to the strategies in the building that they're going to double down on. I'm thinking about morning meetings, right? If we find out in a specific school that self-awareness is not where we want it to be, they're going to build some curriculum around helping kids identify how they're doing or what they need in those kind of spaces. So the PD happens at the leader level, and then the support happens through our community superintendents and other expectations that the language or the schools would be presenting this information and using this information in their decisions in the building. And so, and teachers have access to these dashboards as well. So it kind of trickles up and trickles down.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is done at an administrator level, and then somehow it's supposed to trickle down to individual teachers. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say that we've articulated the expectation that our principals spend time understanding their data. We've equipped them with ways to think about it, how to make decisions around it, and then our hope is that as they work with their teachers and set their action plans in these buckets of press and personalization, that you're using this data to show their teachers it and to help make plans for their school year.
Could I also add that there is professional development for teachers? It's what our counselors and social workers present regarding data regarding students. There's also professional development regarding our supports as we prepare for this survey for our students. So it's on multiple levels, professional development.
Well, my experience as a teacher in professional development is that the vast majority of professional development is administrators dotting I's and crossing T's, and there were very few professional development days that I actually walked out of a day that I could actually use something in my classroom. I would hope that at least as we move forward, I would like to be able to go talk to teachers and have them say, yes, this was something I could use in a professional development day. I'm still not getting an answer to my question. I think maybe I need a one-on-one with someone.
Yeah, we'd be glad to bring you in and go through it exactly. We've got that meeting scheduled with you about Decision Ed anyway, which has the platform which a lot of this data can be found on, so we can show you exactly how it's disseminated and broken up, and hopefully at that point it'll satisfy the question.
Well, I'm not going to speak for the whole board, just for myself, but if you have a survey that's crunched for a particular school, and you have a high percentage of students saying that they don't feel safe, can you show me action plans that are going to address?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, even like what we, and maybe we're not articulating it clearly enough, and we'll provide some school level action plans that have goals around personalization. What we're saying is those goals should be informed. This isn't the only data point, but this is a data point that should inform the school around their focus on the personalization side of what we're discussing. So maybe we're not articulating this correctly, but we'll bring you in, we'll show you the dashboard, show you the survey, show you a school level action plan, and the goals that the school has chosen around making sure that we are valuing students and creating a sense of belonging.
Okay, just as a general question, the state requirement that schools had to list all the textbooks, all the reading materials, was there a professional development day or part of a day completely devoted to that for our teachers?
Absolutely not.
But yet this hit them like 2 weeks after school started. Everybody was in a frenzy to scan all these books. Why wasn't it part of a professional development day?
So the rules that came out for that didn't come out until, what was it, May? August 11th. Yeah, and so, number one, majority of professional development days were already passed. We planned for those days well in advance, and just to be quite honest with you, if anybody on our team said we were going to spend a whole day on that, I would have questioned my decision to put them in that role.
Well, I don't mean a whole day, but some of the legislation, at least the latest legislation was passed June 1st, 2021.
Legislation gets passed, but the rules don't come out.
Yeah, I
until-
understand.
until
I
after.
understand. But
I mean, just like TISA, we've got legislation passed, we still don't have the rules for TISA. I mean, so it's not, I think it's, one thing that's hard for the public to understand is legislation gets talked about, it gets passed, but the procedural piece of the legislation doesn't come to us till a while after. And even in the conversation about the books, there were conversations about, does it include the library or does it include classrooms as well? And again, to the professional development, that's one of those things where we make a decision and say, we have great teachers that pretty smart. We send them a frequently asked questions document, and hopefully that takes care of it.
Yeah, and I just want to redirect us back to the topic of the survey. And so, Mr. Groen, do you have any more questions about the survey specifically?
no, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Mrs. Black.
As a social worker, I'm really excited that we are doing these kinds of surveys and trying to catch kids who might slip through the cracks otherwise and really address their needs. I understand, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all of those things and the importance of this. I do share some concern that a third party owns this data. Is there some sort of, how long is our contract with this company? Is there some sort of compromise that we could possibly bring this in-house and manage this ourselves? I mean, I have 2 kids in the school system, and it does, even though I recognize the incredible importance and value in these surveys, I do share some concern of just not, I work very diligently as a parent to control my kids' data at home on our devices, the things that they have access to, the things that they sign in with, and kind of freely giving that over. I want the school system to have this data, but I also share some concerns about a third party owning it, and what that does.
I believe it's a 1-year contract. We'll look into that and make sure we get it back to you, and also the safeguards around the data.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested in, what the financial difference between, hiring people who could manage something like this in-house for us versus the contract that we're paying the company just so that we control the data and can ensure that it's kept private versus a third party.
All right, Mr. Smith.
I say this often. I thought we were here to teach math and science and literacy, and it's just a sad day, and it's where the world's at, that we have to do all these other things. And I often say that so much expectation, I think, is put on the Department of Ed and you guys that it just shouldn't be the job, in my opinion. I don't know if she's still here or not. Yes, she is. I see her now. And she made the suggestion, you correct me if I'm wrong, about opting in instead of opting out. And I like that idea. Have y'all talked about that? Or?
Yeah, we have. We feel like the opting out, and we've taken, again, steps to make this as easy as possible. It's now part of registration. Right there when you register your kid, you can opt out. I don't know that there's one that's better than the other. I have some hunches that if we did an opt-in, that it would be at the detriment of some of our most underserved students.
Is that a policy? We have a policy on that? Is that a policy issue? No?
You do.
We do? Okay. What
Yes,
policy
ma'am.
is that?
I'm glad you asked. It's in fact, well, I just lost it. Give me a second. I think it's 6.4. Yeah, 6404. And largely your policy tracks state law. Okay. There's certain surveys that parents have to opt into. There are a lot that they can opt out of, but there are certain policies. For example, one's dealing. Well, there's a list, and it's on the first page. But mental or psychological problems of the student, the student's family, sexual behaviors or attitudes, and other related matters, those are things that have to be opted into. So hypothetically, if there were a survey on LGBTQ issues, that survey actually has to go out first, and parents have a choice to opt in. So when we're talking about the opt-in, opt-out, it's important to understand there are some things that by default you have to opt in. Everything else you can opt out of. And those things, Ms. Thurman, range the gamut from bullying surveys, which I think this board would recognize very important for this board and this administration to have that kind of data. And so if you opt out, if you require people to opt in to those, you're going to get some skewed results. Where this falls, that's a judgment call, because I think we have to defer to those
I just wanted to know
folks.
so I could read the policy
Sure.
and see what it says. Okay.
If you look at 6404, and in particular, if you look in the middle of that first page, starting at line 16, ma'am, you'll see the list of things that we have to get explicit permission for. Everything else, it's opt out.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Smith, did that? Okay. Mr. Keene.
Well, I'm going to give a good exit activity here because, as I always told teachers, have a good exit strategy at the end. So the exit question is the time spent doing this survey worth the time lost for academics?
I'd argue it is.
And there you go. That's the exit activity.
Okay, that concludes our presentations for today, and it was front-loaded and heavy today. We are actually behind schedule, so I'm going to make a suggestion. What if we take a 5-minute break, and then we roll into our agenda discussion, and then straight into voting? Would that be? I mean, I feel like we probably need to get some wiggles out. As my.
You mean take a break and then go into the regular meeting?
Well, we have to do an agenda discussion, and then we do our voting. Well, yeah, it is. It's lined out that way. Yeah, I'm happy to do whatever.
You can move right in.
We could. Okay, let's do that. If everyone's comfortable with it, we'll just move straight into the agenda. If you have discussion items, you can pull it from the agenda. But for now, we'll take a 5-minute break. So.